Hopefully the premise of today's video is not so outlandish that I lose the audience before they even hear what I have to say. I know that Halo being an arena shooter isn't even really something that's debated, it's just accepted. I think a large portion of Halo fans would call it that. I think they've called it that for a long time, and more importantly, I think a lot of Halo fans think of Halo first when they hear the term. That's probably the game they were playing when they heard it for the first time, and really, the catalyst for this discussion was a tweet that I made not too long ago where I said Halo is not an arena shooter. And it was controversial. The responses ranged from, wow, nice take, I agree, to, I think I've found the dumbest man on the internet. I got comments like, hey, I disagree with you on almost everything you've ever said in your entire life, but finally, you said something worthwhile. And I also got a lot of, hey, I'm a big fan, right there with you on almost everything, but you're out of your goddamn mind with this take. So I thought I'd talk about it today, defend myself a bit, elaborate on why I don't think Halo is an arena shooter, what caused me to say this, and also whether I think it's even a big deal. So is it a big deal? No, it's not. This is going to be a lighthearted discussion. This topic is so utterly unimportant to the grand scheme of things, it literally changes nothing. The game is whatever it is, no matter what you call it. The distinction has no bearing on quality whatsoever. It is semantics and a giant-ass waste of time to truly argue it, or at least to argue it seriously. So if you listen to what I have to say today, and you leave this video still thinking Halo is an arena shooter, I don't care. I'm not trying to really change your mind today. I'm not going to be a snobby asshat to you or correct you if you'd like to use the term. I'm just going to explain why I don't think so, and also why I don't want to use it to describe Halo anymore. So why did I tweet this if I don't care? Well, my opinion of this does not come from a position of elitism or snobbiness or a sense that I'm better than you, or because I just like to argue pointless shit. This was not an argument of Halo's worthiness to be associated with the term, which I think some people misinterpreted, like the arena shooter moniker was a club that I didn't want Halo to be in. It was actually the opposite. It was with great reverence, appreciation, and respect for the series that I don't like to call it that. Studying this game for the years that I have grown to be in absolute awe of its design. I think it's genius and unique. And because I have such reverence for that design and the unique gameplay that it provides, I look at more traditional AFPS games like Quake and Unreal Tournament, and I just don't feel comfortable putting Halo in that bubble because the gameplay they provide compared to Halo is completely different. They feel absolutely nothing alike. It is a horrible comparison. And again, it's semantics, but for years this association has been used to argue against Halo's viability. Halo doesn't work in a modern market. Look at all of these arena shooters that have failed. Look at the numbers. No one wants to play these games. Look at Reflex or Quake Champions or Unreal Tournament 4. And I've been seeing it for years, and honestly, as you can see, my thoughts on this have been pretty consistent going all the way back to 2016. Hey, it has some elements that it shares with those games, or it's a hybrid or whatever, and a lot of times it was in response to someone using that association to question Halo's viability. So that concept has recently had a massive resurgence with Halo Infinite not performing as well as many had hoped. I saw it happening again, and the years of hearing it finally prompted the tweet that I made, because I think Halo does more than enough to separate itself from those games. And if you read the tweet in that context, it is very clear that I was defending Halo here and actually promoting it as a special experience instead of how many people interpreted it as me just maybe being contrarian or elitist or dumb. And what's interesting is Hardy LaBelle, the lead multiplayer designer on Halo Combat Evolved, actually replied to this tweet. And that reply got posted to Reddit Halo and exploded due to his comments on Halo being a party game, which I think is a big belief there. A lot of people really liked his thoughts on that, but of course, there sat the first half of my tweet with no context, and I was just catching fucking strays. Yeah, Hardy, so glad to hear you validate these thoughts I have on Halo, and it's, needing more party shit. But what the fuck's up with this guy? Halo's not an arena shooter? That top comment is whack. I mean, what a fucking idiot, am I right? Funnily enough, in the same thread, I asked Hardy, hey, what do you think about this? Am I just crazy for thinking this? I'd love your perspective. And, I found his comments rather interesting. Again, Hardy LaBelle, lead multiplayer designer for Halo Combat Evolved, he said, you're definitely not crazy. Intention informs all design choices, and in my opinion, the intentions of arena shooters are the opposite of original Halo multiplayer. He also said, "I'm pretty sure anyone who played competitive Quake would laugh at the notion of Halo as an arena shooter. It's not as tight or sweaty as those games by design," okay? And you don't have to agree with Hardy here. I don't always agree with him either, but can the fact that Halo's dad also doesn't consider Halo an arena shooter at least take the discussion's temperatures down a few notches? Can we at least consider now that there are valid perspectives for Halo being something else, that there have to be people who define it differently? Can it at least become a more nuanced, calm, and lighthearted talk than the ultra-inflammatory, insult-filled let's meme and shit on Fav party that it was for a little bit there? Thank you, I appreciate it. Look, Halo's gameplay is completely different. It feels completely different, and the whole point of genres is to group similar experiences together. The reason we even make shit up like the term arena shooter, because it is a completely made up vague name, is to distinguish particular kinds of experiences. And as gaming evolves and we learn more and we discover more and new things appear, we re-evaluate and redesignate. Did you know that first-person shooters were not called first-person shooters in their infancy? They were called Doom clones. And as the genre expanded, that term became less and less applicable, and we started to differentiate these games with new terms that are completely made up and have no concrete definition either. So with that being said, when I said this, it was an attempt to separate Halo from those types of experiences, because I and many others associate the term arena shooter with Quake and Unreal Tournament and modern attempts at that formula such as Reflex and Toxic. And a lot of people who play those games will often define the genre based on the characteristics of those games as well. They would probably mention the speed and the skill-based systems those games utilize in their movement way faster than they say things like even starts or weapon pickups, which is probably the first thing a Halo fan would say. And a lot of those traditional AFPS players who use those traditional elements to define what an arena FPS is will probably look at Halo and say, yeah, you know, that ain't it, okay? And I think that's okay, because Halo does a bunch of really cool shit that some of those traditional arena shooters don't do. So what is the difference? Well, obviously Halo introduced a lot of distinguishing concepts when it hit the scene. While games like Quake and Unreal Tournament allowed you to hold every weapon in the game at once, Halo utilized a 2-weapon limit. But not only that, Halo's sandbox structure itself is very distinct from arena shooters, distinct from any game. It utilizes what is often referred to as a utility weapon, which is a controversial topic in Halo. It's a powerful, versatile starting weapon which completely recontextualizes the role weapon pickups have in the sandbox. And by the way, this idea was also referenced by Hardy in that thread. Additionally, Halo had regenerating health. This completely changes every single engagement in the game because it adds consistency and readability. The reason we have terms like four-shotted is because we know during every single encounter, overshield notwithstanding, a player will take 4 shots to kill if the final shot is a headshot. We know without a shadow of a doubt that 1 shot to the head or 2 shots to the body will kill with a sniper rifle. We know this because when a player is hurt, their shields will recharge to the exact same place it was just a few seconds ago. And even in the Halo games that had a separate health bar, it was simply a small component within Halo's overall health system and not nearly as relevant compared to the regeneration component. Arena shooters, or traditional arena shooters at least, utilized health pickups or armor pickups to extend your survivability beyond one's initial health pool, thus creating tremendous variance during an engagement. You may run across someone who has full health and a ton of armor, or you may run across someone who lost all their health in a previous engagement and has been unable to replenish it. Your ability to replenish your health in an arena shooter was tied to map knowledge and your ability to control those pickups, and this created a unique dynamic of map control. When you combine Halo's regenerating health system with its unique sandbox structure, you start every life relatively well equipped to overcome whatever disadvantages may have occurred throughout the match. You have a competent, versatile weapon that can give you a chance in just about any scenario, and a health system that ensures parity from encounter to encounter. And that is super important because Halo doesn't have the speed to overcome those disadvantages otherwise. And really, speed is the big differentiating factor here, because the other things I just mentioned are cool wrinkles and they definitely create distinct elements within Halo, but the speed at which the game is played, to me, is what makes Halo and traditional shooters feel absolutely nothing alike one another. And this speed and this skill within movement is what a lot of OG AFPS players associate with the genre. I watched a great video on this by an Arena FPS fan that attempts to define what an Arena FPS is, and I would recommend you give it a watch because it will show you their perspective on what these games are and why they like them. That speed is often considered just one differentiating variable. Okay, well, Halo's just a slower arena shooter. That's just like one difference. One's faster, one's slower. The speed at which arena shooters are played and the advanced movement techniques that are utilized, all with simultaneous combat, literally recontextualize everything. In Halo, shooting is about micro-precision. You have a target, there may be strafing a tiny bit, but the expectation is that you should land 4 shots on target within 4 to 6 attempts of firing the primary precision weapon. That's what you do over and over again, multiple times a match. That's aiming in Halo. In Quake, you're trying to fire a fucking rocket launcher at players moving at light speed and get your shots close enough to do splash damage on an enemy, and it's hard. That's how different the speed levels are in these. Tracking weapons in Arena FPS is actually hard as fuck to keep on target. A tracking weapon in Halo CE through 3 is basically a timer to see if the person you're shooting at can find a way to kill you first, because their ability to evade those weapons isn't even in the same stratosphere. It completely changes how you navigate a map, your ability to control a map. In Halo, you were limited as to how you moved and navigated a play space due to your smaller set of mobility options, while arena shooters let you zip around at light speed by default, and most of them have additional advanced movement mechanics such as strafe jumping or bunny hopping, where you could get up to twice as fast. And even when Halo added additional mobility options like Halo 5, they did so in a different way via abilities, and it still wasn't even close to being as fast. Halo's slower cadence paired with its sandbox structure and health model gave it a distinct feeling, and they all complemented each other. It didn't have the speed, right? You couldn't zip around the map and get armor and a full set of weapons nearly as easily, so it helped that the game gave you a compelling and competent weapon at the start and equalized everyone's health to have more parity. And that's really what it all boils down to. The speed, the sandbox, the health model, plus tons of little wrinkles, it changes the feel of the game. And this obviously is completely subjective and impossible to quantify, but you just feel it. And to me, gameplay is weighted very heavily as to what my opinion of something is, so I'm more inclined to associate genre with how something feels and which games feel like them. So if you are somebody who laughed at the idea that Halo isn't an arena shooter, just play one of these games for a few minutes. I don't think it takes long at all to determine for yourself that these two experiences don't feel anything alike. And it is a disservice to both of them that we lump them together. I'm not saying it's impossible to like both, but you'll probably like them for different reasons, because in my opinion, they are not even the same genre of game. I like Halo better, but I get why people like those games that pioneered this term. And there absolutely should be a distinction, because if genres are made up to categorize similar experiences, then we are missing the entire point by insisting we assign these two styles to the same one, because they don't go together. So that's my reasoning as to why I don't consider Halo an arena shooter. I used to call it that. I don't mind that other people still call it that. But I have become disenchanted with the label personally, especially when it is used to diminish Halo's viability. And you know, 343 calls Halo an arena shooter. They use the term in their marketing. They push it, and they don't have the best track record at accurately distinguishing concepts from one another. And if they associate Halo with these experiences that have nothing in common and very little crossover in audience, they may mistakenly shift Halo in the wrong direction, which has been known to happen. So that's my thought process. It's not a dig, it's not an elitist position, it is as simple as I associate the term arena shooter with a style of gameplay that Halo very simply does not have. And there are many others who would define the genre in this way, as it describes the games that started it. And I think Halo is really special and maybe should start being considered something more distinct to recognize its unique offering. This isn't about one being better than the other. They both have tremendous merit, and while both Halo and traditional arena shooters are struggling a bit right now, they do not have the same problems. Halo's current struggles are completely different to the things that arena FPS games are struggling with. Halo has been in an identity crisis for the past decade, fitting considering the topic of this video and the response to this topic. The people making the games have just had a tough time even defining what the game is. And I think arena shooters are just naturally a little less accessible and have had a tough time onboarding new players in a way that doesn't fundamentally damage the tenets of the game, because the goal isn't to change the special parts of your game, game to get more people to play it, but find a way to get people through the learning curve so they can experience the special parts of your game. That goes for everything really, but I think the learning curve on AFPS games especially is making that a challenge, but I absolutely think they are viable from a pure design perspective. So no problem if you don't agree with me, you might carry a different definition. Honestly, that term has so many meanings and is used to describe so many games that locking it down to one true definition is impossible. I've seen people describe Titanfall 2 as an arena shooter. I've seen people say Team Fortress 2 is an arena shooter because it started as a Quake mod. I've seen people say anything that uses arena-style map design is an arena shooter. I mean, even taking the definition we use for Halo, even starts and on-map pickups, that's super broad. That includes games like Gears, that includes games like 007 Nightfire, that would include most of the battle royales on the market, albeit with random item drops, and no one would consider those arena shooters, they most certainly are not. But interestingly enough, games like Quake Champions, which everybody would say falls within the genre, does not have even starts. It doesn't even fit this incredibly broad moniker, and yet is widely considered an AFPS because of its feel. Because it feels like those games that originally coined the term. Hell, I've seen fucking Doom Eternal get the stamp of approval in the last couple days as well, because again, it feels like one, and uses a lot of arena-style levels in the campaign, and that game has asymmetrical multiplayer, okay? So, if you still disagree, like I said, no problem, but I hope at least you understand the perspective I have on this and consider whether or not it may be beneficial to redesignate Halo. Is it benefiting Halo to call it this? And you know, what should we call it then? I got no fucking clue. I don't even have that answer for you today. A hybrid, a sandbox shooter, whatever. But those are my thoughts. Let me know if I moved the needle a bit for you today. But regardless of what genre you consider Halo to be in, the franchise and the experience it provides is 100% viable. And if nurtured, will be just as compelling to people 20 years from now as it was 20 years ago. And really, that's what I want to focus on more than anything. I want to talk about what makes Halo special going forward on this channel. And I'd love for you to join me. Till next time.